Thank you for the invitation to tell you all a bit about our journal, GEUS Bulletin, and to walk you through some of the open source tools that we have adopted into our workflow. First, I'll give a short introduction to the journal for some context, so you know a little about who we are and what we publish. And then I'll describe 3 applications of the open source tools that we use to publish our journal, manage submissions, host a back catalogue of other titles, and to host supplementary data. We're really pleased to be supporting and promoting open source publishing tools as they allow us to achieve our publishing aims as a small, community-led journal on a limited budget. Adopting these tools also means that we benefit from and contribute to a vibrant community of journal editors and developers all over the world who continue to update and develop these tools. So our journal is called GEUS Bulletin. GEUS is the acronym for the Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland, and GEUS Bulletin is the flagship peer-reviewed scholarly journal published by GEUS. We publish geoscience research covering the key geographical areas in which GEUS works, so that includes Denmark, Greenland, and the wider North Atlantic and Arctic regions. And we accept submissions of short format articles in the style of rapid communications and technical notes for new datasets and methods, regular length articles which document new research or an in-depth literature review, as well as thematic issues and special issues, so for example monographs and map descriptions. We're proudly Diamond Open Access, which means we're free to publish and it's free to read us online. And we're open to submissions from geoscientists both inside and outside of GEUS. So the series has existed since 2003, but it was only recently in 2020 that we relaunched the journal on a brand new digital platform with a new journal website and submission system. And we did this using open source software, which I'll describe shortly. We're of course indexed in the usual places, including Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar, and the Directory of Open Access Journals, or DOAJ. And we were recently awarded the DOAJ seal, a recognition that we meet an expanded list of editorial criteria, roughly in line with the PLANET's mandate for open access journals. But in addition to our current series, we also have a large back catalogue of legacy titles and former series published by GEUS and its forerunners, the Geological Survey of Greenland and the Geological Survey of Denmark. And altogether, this back catalogue dates back more than 100 years. So these series were also in desperate need of digitization and online publication. So we did all of this in 2021, again using open source tools. The first open source tool that I would like to show is the journal platform and the submission system software that we use to host our current series and to manage all submissions and the peer review process. And this is what you can see on screen now, which is our website as it looks pretty much today. It's called the Open Journal Systems, or OJS, and it's developed by a small team at the Public Knowledge Project, or PKP, at Simon Fraser University Library in Canada. It's an open source project with an active community of developers and journal editors who contribute to adding new features and functionality or guidance to the PKP team in their development of the basic platform. Many journals opt for a self-hosted solution, as the code base can be downloaded and installed by anyone. However, we opted for a hosted solution with PKP, whereby we pay an annual fee for hosting, and this also covers maintenance, troubleshooting, and upgrades. And I always describe this platform as the WordPress for journals, because you can have your basic web installation, and from here you choose a theme, which determines the overall layout and the look of the website, as you see on screen here. And then each journal can make further customizations using the options available within that theme and by applying additional CSS. And that's exactly what we've done for our journal. In terms of the functionality, some of which you can see on screen at the moment, you build out what you need from this basic installation by downloading and activating plugins. So just as you do in WordPress. So for example, the view that you can see on screen now, where you have a full text of the article shown in this side-by-side format, This is achieved by activating one of those plugins. PKP has a number of official plugins. So these are plugins that are maintained and updated by PKP. And many of these are developed in partnership with publishing services. So for example, PKP have worked with OrcID and with Crossref, and they've developed plugins that allow authors to, for example, validate authorship via their OrcID record and deposit DOIs with Crossref. But there are also a number of third-party plugins. So these are not developed or maintained by PKP. For example, PlumX Metrics plugin, which we use, it uses Elsevier products to display metrics in the articles themselves, so citations, social media mentions, and so on. There are also plugins to expand the type of citation metadata that is collected during the submission process, and also to analyze web traffic. So for us, this solution is working very well. It allows us to present a modern online journal to the world. It allows us to manage all our submissions as well as the peer review process. There are, of course, limitations. It doesn't yet offer some of the functionality that you get with solutions from larger commercial journal software companies. But for a smaller journal like ours, it meets our needs so far. And the community of users and developers continue to push the functionality and scope of the platform, so the functionality continues to grow. The second open source tool again uses OJS, but this time we use it to host a collection of journals. And this is what you can see on the screen now. By default, OJS is designed to host multiple titles, and that's exactly what we've done here, where we use it to host not only our current series GEUS Bulletin, but also 14 legacy titles published by GEUS and its forerunners, the Geological Survey of Greenland and the Geological Survey of Denmark. So we launched this site in 2021. It's called GEUS Journals, and you can find it by going to geusjournals.org. And for many of these titles, especially the oldest titles, it was actually the first time that they were digitized and published online. As I said, we have 14 legacy titles here dating back around about 100 years. And in total, it's around about 3,000 articles up to now. For all of these titles, it was the first time that they were published on a dedicated journal platform like OJS. And it was the first time that the articles were therefore encoded with the correct citation metadata, had the correct tools to download a citation, first time that they were assigned DOIs, and the first time that they were available to be crawled and indexed by, for example, Google Scholar. And to achieve what you see here, we made a number of customizations. So, for example, because they're discontinued titles, we didn't need to show a current issue on the home page, so we made a customization there. Just a little before on the video, you saw the search function that we added. This is another customization. Here it is. So this enables the user to search the entire back catalogue, including all of the legacy titles as well as the current series GEUS Bulletin. So in terms of preserving the scientific record and making it open and accessible to the global scientific community, using OJS was really the best option for us. And now GEUS Journals provides a valuable resource for geoscientists working in Denmark and Greenland. Previously, they would have had to email someone at GEUS to hunt down a PDF of these old series. But now we're really happy to see it all online and, of course, open access. The final open source tool that I want to show you today moves away from OJS. This is the Harvard Dataverse, an open source data repository software built to encourage the publication of data according to the FAIR data principles, meaning that the data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we have a self-hosted version of Dataverse. It's used by all of GEUS, but the bulletin has its own area within this Dataverse called a subdataverse. And this is what we use to host supplementary files, data, and code that accompanies our published articles. So here, each data set receives a DOI. Actually, each file receives its own individual DOI. And we include the dataset DOI in all of our published articles. We also include the related article information in the dataset. So full citation and the DOI to the related article. So in this way, both the dataset and the related article are permanently linked by way of a DOI. And the really smart thing with the Dataverse setup is that it enables versioning, so you can update the datasets when that becomes available. It's easy to meet the FAIR data principles, and you can upload extensive metadata alongside each dataset and data file. And what's really neat is that it supports file structures, so you can upload code used in a study. You can do so in a way that maintains the file structure needed to run that code and reproduce the methods in the published article. I'd like to close with a question posed to us by our external board. They asked us whether geospatial data, meaning maps and localities, were easily findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable in GEUS Bulletin articles. And they asked us actually a number of sort of sub-questions underneath this main umbrella question. And I just want to focus on one of those today, because I think it's a good example of how we're trying to use OJS tools to respond to the needs of users and external board members. So they specifically asked us, can we make it easier to find relevant literature by enabling a geospatial search? So in other words, to find articles by the study location, either on our website or to make that information available to external websites. And in OJS, you can already browse by categories. We use this already. So for example, we have a number of geospatial categories covering Denmark, Greenland, and the regions. So when an author makes a submission to the journal, they already should select which category applies to their study. OJS also has the ability to include coverage metadata. This isn't enabled by default, but it can be enabled in the submission system in the settings there. But to go any further, to get, for example, coverage metadata in a certain format and to actually implement some sort of search function, you'd then need to turn to the OJS community to expand the basic OJS functionality by way of developing a plugin. And we're keeping an eye on a very interesting project at the moment. It's a German project called Optimeta. And they're aiming to collect geospatial metadata from OJS articles and to enable some sort of search function using this geospatial data. So this is something that looks really promising. And this is really the beauty of OJS, that you can develop the functionality that is needed by the community by way of plugin development. So that's something that we'll be keeping an eye on over the next few months to a year. And with that, I'll just say thank you very much for listening. You can find the bulletin by going to geusbulletin.org or GEUS Journals by going to geusjournals.org. And of course, you can send an email or find us on the regular social media channels. Thank you very much.